4-11, and I'll take a look at 4-10, which is very similar, and it kind of lays it out and it gives you a lot of information there. And I believe what I've done is just kind of taking the information that I'm going to need, based on the formulas. I think it asks me to calculate the degree of operating leverage, the degree of financial leverage, the degree of combined leverage, and those formulas are kind of towards the end of the chapter. So I took the information that I knew that I was going to need. In quantity, I'm going to need my price, my variable costs, my fixed costs, which are all given to me there in the bottom of page 147 for number 10. And I also took my EBIT, or earnings before interest and taxes, and then my interest. Okay, I'm going to need all those for my formulas, and so I've put those up here. You could put them this direction, it wouldn't matter, I guess, as long as they're labeled and fairly easy to find. This gets to be a case where sometimes these formulas get to be kind of long, and getting all your parentheses correct and everything can really be a pain in the butt. Sometimes I might recommend even doing this, okay, which I've kind of done here, and said, okay, my degree of operating leverage is my quantity times my price minus my variable cost. So my quantity times my price minus my variable cost. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. My quantity times, I'm going to do parentheses because I got a subtraction function here, price minus my variable cost. And yes, I could have done that math in my head, but this is good practice. Okay, 600,000, and then I've got the same thing, quantity times price minus variable cost, so $600,000 minus my fixed cost. Okay, you'll notice that this part of the formula and this part of the formula are the same, and so I can say that I can just this minus my fixed cost. Okay, so now this represents the top part of my formula, the numerator, and this represents the denominator, so I can simply say that this is equal to, whoa, where'd it go? It's got something goofed up. Let's escape and see if I can figure this out here. I don't know what the heck it did wrong there, so let's see if it'll let me do it. It doesn't want to do it. I better pause. Okay, I figured out why it wouldn't let me do it. I had the whole formula here into this cell. Okay, and so when I was clicking the equal sign, it was going way out. It still is, but I moved this one far enough over now that it's not getting this one. So I can say it's equal to this divided by this. Okay, that's one easy way to do it, and you kind of separate out or make the equation, I think, a little bit easier. I did have in here the full equation before, and you can certainly do that. Again, you just have to make sure that your parentheses and stuff are okay. So for this one, the degree of operating leverage too, just to talk about it a little bit, that's dealing with fixed costs versus kind of variable costs, I guess. And a company that has lots of fixed costs relative to variable costs, in other words, their variable costs are low, would be said to have high degree of operating leverage, and thus every sale that they make will contribute more to the bottom line than a company that has high variable costs relative to its high fixed costs. So we just look at that, and that's it's one of those things that don't compare apples to oranges. In other words, comparing Amazon to Apple here just wouldn't be a valid comparison. There is the degree of operating leverage wouldn't be the same. Comparing Apple to Samsung, maybe, right? Maybe comparing Google to Facebook might be similar enough that you could make a good comparison. Okay. Degree of financial leverage is the degree to which we use financing in order to drive our profits. Now, this is one of those cases where there's always that risk-reward thing. So you'll find out when you do the degree of financial leverage, if you do a bunch of them, that generally speaking, the greater financial leverage you have, the more each sale will contribute to profit. Okay, so why wouldn't we just borrow everything? Well, I mean, the answer is you would, really, if you could. Okay, the problem is there's always risk associated with that, and so as you get too much leverage, you get kind of reined in. And this is a really good, it's a good thing to compare companies, because you might actually, if you're investing, like a company that has a relatively high degree of financial leverage, if you don't mind taking the risk. Okay, if you're a little less risky, then you're comparing companies in the same industry, especially. You might choose one that has a lower degree of financial leverage. So this formula is fairly simple. It's just the EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, divided by the EBIT minus the interest. Okay, so equal to the EBIT divided by, we'll need a parentheses, the EBIT minus the interest. In parentheses, hit enter, and there we go, 1.33, excuse me. Daggone wrong number. Here we go. So the degree of combined leverage then is really the degree of operating leverage, and then put the interest, subtract the interest from the denominator, right? So we're going to make the denominator a little smaller, so we'd expect this to be a little bit higher. Okay. Again, if you're comparing companies in the same industry, this could be a pretty valid comparison, and it might, again, it would bring on some risk. Generally speaking, the higher this number, the more each sale will contribute to profits, but also the higher the number, in all likelihood, the riskier it is. Okay. So you could simply say, you could do this a couple different ways, I guess. Of course, I calculated over here again the top part of the formula, which is simply my quantity times my price minus my variable cost. And then I calculated the bottom part of the formula, which is, it's the same as this, but also minus interest. So that's probably all I did, was just said this is equal to this one minus my interest. Okay, and then I put in the whole long formula here, but again, if you broke it down and you said, here's the top part of the formula, here's the, or I should say the numerator, and here's the denominator, I can simply say this is equal to the numerator divided by the denominator, and away we go. I'm going to go back. I want to leave my formula in there. So then we got the break-even point. What's the break-even point? Fixed cost divided by my contribution margin, and my contribution margin is what? It's my price minus my variable cost. We go back to that first thing up there, right? Contribution margin, or gross profit, is price minus my variable cost. And so I can say that this is simply equal to my fixed cost, or 400 grand, divided by parentheses price minus variable cost. In parentheses, hit enter, and I've got a break-even point of 13,333 units. Thanks. There's a 4-11 for you guys.